All right, welcome all explorers. You're now watching Learn Around the World's Meet a Local. So we want to welcome everyone, and we're about to welcome our guest speaker in with us. But before we do, we want to go ahead and let you know and remind you this is an interactive experience. So we want to see your questions early, and we want to see your questions often. So we'll have lots of stuff to ask our guest speaker today. So let's go ahead and get started, explorers. So where are we going today, or who are we meeting? So we're going to meet Jorrit. So Jorrit is, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, it's Jorrit, like tag Jorrit. Jorrit.
Jorrit. Okay. And I actually had to tag into a camp friend and get that far along with it. So we're going to go ahead and get started, explorers. So you're watching Learn Around the World's Meet a Local. So this is our guest speaker series where we meet locals from all around the world, primarily outside of the United States, because most of our audience is in the U.S., but sometimes we do speak with immigrant communities and native peoples in our country as well. And our whole goal here is just to meet someone from somewhere else, and we can all ask them questions. So one of the best ways to travel, in my opinion, is to meet locals. So ask people, what do you like to eat? What do you like to do? And that's the best way to experience the world, in my humble opinion. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's program is brought to you by learnaroundtheworld.com, bringing you virtual field trips and guest speakers just like today right into your homes. Unfortunately, now we are out of the classroom. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So we like to say here on the program that location matters. So explorers, we like to remind you, as always, as you travel the world and continue in your journey as being a good global citizen, you always need to start with a little bit of self-reflection, because as you travel around the world, you're going to see the world a little bit different than I do. And as our guest speaker here today travels the world and comes to our homes, he's going to see the world a little bit different and your home a little bit different than you do, right? It makes sense, right? Some things are taste differently to all of us. And so when we go around the world, we need to keep that in mind. We like to acknowledge before we begin our programs that we're coming to you live from Portland, Maine today. We're on the native land of the Wabanaki people, or people of the dawn. So if you don't know whose native land you're on, we encourage you to start there with becoming a good global citizen. That's a great place to start. All right, so where are we going today, explorers? Well, we are going to the Netherlands. So let's go ahead and zoom in if you don't know where the Netherlands is located. So we're going to Europe today. And as we zoom in closer, we're going to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And we will be looking at some pictures and speaking to one of the locals there. All right, so welcome to the show, Jorrit. Let's go ahead and bring you on. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your favorite flavor of ice cream? And everyone that's joining us now today, we want to know where you're watching from as well, and let us know your favorite flavor of ice cream in the chat box as well. All right, welcome to the show.
Hi, do you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now. Go for it.
Okay, perfect. Hi. So this is me, Jorrit. Welcome everyone. Good evening from Amsterdam, actually, and good afternoon in the US on the East Coast. Still good morning on the West Coast, I think. So my favorite ice cream brand and my favorite ice cream flavor is actually, I'm really boring. I actually like vanilla and strawberry, the most boring two flavors, I think. But I like them the best if they're done well, though.
Right, and I'm going to go ahead and disagree that they're boring, because vanilla happens to be my favorite ice cream flavor as well, and I definitely do not think it's boring, but that's just me. All right, so just to let you know who we have joining us already, and I'm sure there's more folks in our show as well, but we have the Currys are joining us from San Antonio, Texas today. We have, let's see, from Clayton, North Carolina, we have Susan with us today. I'm from North Carolina, by the way, so good to see our Clayton folks in the house. We have Kathy with us from Oregon. We have, let's see, McMinnville, Oregon. And we have the Currys. Their favorite flavors are goat cheese with basil and local honey, and also strawberry ice cream. Let's see, October Moon is joining us from West Salem, Oregon, and their favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate. Can't go wrong with chocolate as well. and then Kathy's from Oregon as well. So welcome one, welcome all. Continue to let us know where you're watching from. If you would like a shout out right here on the show, and also let us know your favorite flavor of ice cream. So let's go ahead, and I think you have a few visuals to show us, and
Yes.
then we'll open it up for a free chat after that. So
Great.
I'll just hand it over to you, and go ahead and share what you would like with us today.
Great. So first of all, really appreciated to hear that so many people from Oregon joined, because I actually lived there for 6 years in Portland, Oregon. So a lot of good memories of that beautiful, beautiful state. Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you something about the Netherlands, and I have some visuals. So let me share my screen with you guys. Um, and let me see. You see this, right?
We do.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, I want to say welcome in Nederland, which basically is in Dutch, welcome to the Netherlands. And as Bren already mentioned, the Netherlands is a tiny little country in the northwest of Europe, and it's bordered by Germany on the east side and Belgium on the south side, and then on the west and the north, we have the North Sea. Um, this is the flag, red, white, and blue. Very familiar for most people in the US, but in a little bit of a different form. And the Netherlands actually is also very well known as Holland. It's very confusing for a lot of people, but outside of the Netherlands, a lot of people refer to my country as Holland. And why is that? It's because actually two of the provinces, if you see here on the map, Northern and Southern Holland, are actually the most dominant provinces in the Netherlands from history. So in the past, when the Netherlands was a pretty big trading nation, a lot of people referred to the whole country as actually the two provinces, the two states, basically. But in total, we have 12 provinces, as you can see here on the map, and they're all quite a little bit different. They also have a lot of different dialects. The capital, as mentioned, is Amsterdam. That's where I live, and it's here on the map with the red star. And the whole country has about 17 million people, which is quite a lot because it's, as I said, quite a small country. It's only 300 kilometers or 200 miles, sorry, from north to south, and actually only 200 kilometers or 125 miles from east to west. And so basically, you can drive easily from the east to the west in 1.5 hours, maximum 2 hours, and from north to south in 3 to 4 hours, depending a little bit on traffic. And as you can see on the map as well, there's a lot of water. All the main rivers from Europe are ending up in the Netherlands, so there's a lot of water around us. And then the language, as I mentioned just in the welcome, we speak Dutch. Not only us do speak Dutch, also a big part of Belgium is speaking Dutch. And actually, even South Africa, in the southern tip of Africa, they speak South Afrikaans besides English, and that's also a type of Dutch. It's actually Old Dutch. But we don't only speak Dutch. We also have another language which is called Frisian, and that's spoken in one northern province, which is called Friesland, of the Netherlands. And actually, it's also spoken in some northern parts of Germany, and that's a separate language. So that province is bilingual. They speak both Dutch as Frisian. And to be honest, my name, even though I'm not from there, but my name is actually Frisian, Jorrit. Not a Dutch name, it's a Frisian name. Don't ask me why my parents called me that way, but because I think they just liked the sound of it. So that's the Netherlands for you. So just maybe focusing a little bit more on Amsterdam, where I live. Amsterdam, as I said, is the capital, and it's very much known for beautiful architecture, a lot of medieval 17th and 17th century architecture, beautiful houses and canals. And the whole city center is World Heritage, which is protected by UNESCO, which is an organization of the United Nations. And besides houses, of course, there's a lot of boats. The Netherlands, as mentioned, and Amsterdam in particular, was a world power in the 7th century and was basically doing a lot of trading around the world and actually discovering a lot of new countries like New Zealand and parts of Australia and a lot of other places, I think, which I don't all know. This is another picture of the city. This is on the Prinsengracht, which is basically Canal of Princes, it's called. And this is actually an interesting canal. It's one of the main canals of Amsterdam. You see the big tower. It's the Wester Church Tower. And this picture is made during King's Day, which is one of the biggest celebrations in the Netherlands, when the population of Netherlands celebrate the birthday of the king, and everyone dresses up in orange because that's the national color. One of the other interesting things on this canal is next to the church, actually, and I don't know if you see my cursor, but here you basically have the house where Anne Frank was hiding during the Second World War, and when she wrote her world famous diary. So it's a lot of importance for the city, and of course a lot of tourists are visiting that place. Of course, in different times than now, not when we're all in lockdown. Another nice picture of a typical canal in Amsterdam. There's hundreds of canals and thousands of bridges, and so it's a pretty beautiful city during day and during night. So besides Amsterdam, the Netherlands is also known for some other typical stuff. And so one of them, of course, is windmills. The amazing amount of bicycles. There's more bicycles in the Netherlands than people. I think it's 1.5 bicycle per person. So there's 17 million people in the Netherlands and about 24, 25 million bicycles. So we love our bicycles. And then thirdly, flowers. So we have a lot of beautiful flower fields, tulips, and especially this time of the year, it attracts a lot of tourists from all over the world. But unfortunately, of course, not this year. So a lot of these flower fields are unseen for this year. But next year, I'm sure everyone will be back to enjoy the beauty of these colorful flowers. And one of the reasons why these three things are so popular and are so typical for the Netherlands is because the Netherlands is as flat as a pancake. And actually, a pancake is also a very Dutch treat. We love our pancakes. In the Dutch, we call it actually a pannenkoek. And a pannenkoek, when people say we're going to offer a pannenkoek, most people say, ah, that's lekker. And lekker is yummy. And in the Netherlands, we have a really interesting sign, because we basically do this when we think something is really nice to eat. When it's yummy, we say that lekker, lekker. So yes, exactly. Actually, we love pancakes. We also love poffertjes, which are actually very tiny little small pancakes. So they're basically only an inch wide, and we like to eat them not one, not two, but probably with tens, with butter and sugar. So we have a lot of other weird food, like we love raw herring. I personally don't love raw herring, but people here love raw herring. They love licorice. We have some very interesting fried food that you can buy in a vending machine in the wall. So weird foods we have. But I don't want to focus on the food today. Maybe that's for next time. But I want to focus on something else. Going back to the reason why the Netherlands is so flat as a pancake. And that's because actually 60% of the country is basically under sea level, basically at the bottom of an ocean. And so you can see that here on the map, especially the west part of the country, which is super populated, where all the main cities are. If we wouldn't keep that dry, everyone would have wet feet, and actually more than wet feet, because some parts, majority of the part is more than 4 meters or 12 feet under sea level. So I want to talk a little bit with you guys today on how we keep our feet dry here, actually, considering this situation. And that's because of a couple of different things. So first of all, is a natural protection, and that's the dunes. And you can see that here in the map also. You see here basically the whole coastline on the left side here is all natural protection from the ocean. So it's the dunes. And it's basically the dunes that are created by wind, right, and water that's pushing against the land, pushing against the coast, and basically pushing up the sand into hills on that coast. And so it's beautiful. I love to bike there. If you see, there's a picture of not myself biking, but when I was doing a bike ride, someone else is biking there. biking beautiful nature through the dunes, and it's a natural protection against the ocean. So that's one thing how we kind of keep our feet dry. But then there's a lot of other work, man-made work, that actually helps us in basically be able to live here. And one of the most important ones are polders. And what is a polder? A polder is a man-made, basically, um, reclamation of land from a lake, a sea, or swamp. So basically, we basically reclaimed land from the water there. And this is a nice picture of a polder on one of my bike rides. I love to bike, very typical Dutch in that way. Um, and so I want to explain to you a little bit how it works with a polder. So basically what they do, and I actually did it already from the 13th century on, so already for 600, 700 years, and the Dutch people have been reclaiming land back on the ocean and on the lakes. And what they did is basically in the water, they created a circle, and you see it here as an example with the yellow line, right? And they basically built a dam. In Dutch, it's a dike. So they built a dam around a piece of water. Then they created on the outside of the dam, they created a canal, and they basically started to pump water from the inside to the outside in the canal, and then the canal would basically float the water towards a big river or to the ocean. And slowly, they basically pumped the water out of that area. And how did they pump that? So in the past, as you can see, with windmills. So that's one of the reasons why there's so many windmills in the Netherlands, because they basically use that to create the power with the wind to basically pump up the water out of the polders, out of that, kind of encircled land or water, and basically pump it dry. Later, after the Industrial Revolution, when the steam machines were invented, they also created these pumps by steam machines. And then in current days, of course, we use electric pumps to continue to keep these areas dry. And you see here in the map, you see basically a whole network of canals that basically creates the drainage for this whole area. And so this brings this water towards these windmills, so the windmills can pump it up into the canal. To further illustrate that, I'm a very bad drawer, but I made a little bit of a section to just kind of further explain how that works. So here on the right, you see the polder. So this was in the past basically water, and the windmill pumped the water from right over the dike, which is a dam, into the canal, which is higher than basically the polder. So basically, it pumps it up to there, and then it moves to the ocean from the canal, right, or to a big river, and then from the river to the ocean. So basically, they slowly pumped these areas empty from water, and they created land for farming, for building cities, and so that's why you see now a lot of places in the Netherlands that are below sea level, and there's a whole, it's a whole country with farming, cities, and other activities below the water line. So to kind of give you a little bit of a picture how that looks like, this was a picture that I made last weekend when I was paddle boarding, which I love. And basically, this is nearby my house. You see here, I'm on the water, and I'm kind of taking a picture from here basically, on this water towards the dam, right? That's you see here a little bit the iron side of the dam, and then over the dam into the polder. And you see here, you see that the houses are below the water, and you see the cars in the street behind there, and you see them, they're far below the water line. So basically the water is higher than the country, which is not, you hardly see that anywhere else in the world, but in the Netherlands. While I was making this picture, of course, there was a bicycle coming by, because there's bicycles everywhere. You cannot avoid them when you try to make a picture in the Netherlands. So that's one thing. It's one of the most important things. And they already make these polders for the last 600-700 years. And then there's two other things that I want to highlight before we go into the questions that also helped keeping the country dry. One of them is called the Afsluitdijk. And that's a big, in the 1930, and so almost 100 years ago, an engineer invented this dike, and basically they executed it around that time. What was the case at that time? This whole area, you see my marker, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. This whole area was an inner sea, so it was directly connected to the ocean. And of course, oceans are always a little harder to control, or to you know, they're rougher than a lake. So basically, this whole area, the coastline here, was always very you know, vulnerable for floodings. And so to avoid that, basically they decided, okay, let's close off this whole area. So we basically create a lake and not an ocean, so we can much better protect the coastal areas around this. And so that's when they built, already 100 years ago, a dike of more than, and a dam of more than 30 kilometers long, 20 miles. And it's one of the only man-made construction works that you can actually see from space without using a telescope. And it's I've biked on it 2 times. There's a lot of wind there because there's a lot of water around you, as you can see, and it's a straight line, so it's very boring. There's a highway on it as well that connects these two provinces, North Holland and Friesland. And biking it with the wind, with headwind, is definitely not fun, and it takes quite a while. It took me, I think, 1.5 or 2 hours to cross that dam. But it's a very big you know, big construction. And because of that, because when they created this lake, they actually could make a huge polder, and that's called Flevoland. They did that in the 60s, and they actually reclaimed land, as I explained earlier, but a huge piece of land. So these two brown areas that I circled, they reclaimed that from that lake, and they actually create a whole new province, a whole new state in there, with big cities, a lot of farming land, and a lot of extra space for a country that has that's quite one of the most populated countries in the world. So we need the extra space, and so they created that in the 60s of last century. There you see a picture of it from above, part of it, just from a little corner of it. And then the final one, an important, I think, a project the Netherlands did to protect themselves from the water. It's called the Delta Works. And I definitely, if you're interested in the subject, definitely would recommend you to do a little bit of research online on this and Google it, because I'm only showing you one of these projects, but there's plenty of different projects that are quite fascinating. In 1953, this area in the southwest of the Netherlands, the delta, where all the rivers are ending up in the ocean, with a lot of islands and big bodies of water, got flooded. And so that was of course not a pleasant experience. And so the government decided at that point, okay, we need to kind of do a similar thing as we did in the north with that big dam here, and we need to protect these bodies of water to be in complete direct contact with the ocean, and to protect basically the coastlines behind it. And so they learned from the project in the north that what they didn't want to happen is that basically the whole ecosystem would be completely influenced. And if you would, of course, put dams here, the salt water from the ocean would not be able to get into these water bodies anymore, and actually it would kill the nature as it is. And they didn't want to do that. So they all had very innovative they created all kind of very innovative dams to basically still protect the country, but keep the water flow going without basically creating a lot of environmental damage. So one of the examples, for example, that they created is this engineering project. It's a 9-kilometer, and this isn't a part of it, but a 9-kilometer, 6 miles dam. It's the Oosterschelde Dam. It's one of them. It's, I think, this one here, where they basically created a dam fully out of locks. And most of the time, like 95% of the time, these locks will be open because there's no danger for the country behind it. But if there's a big storm coming and there's high tide, so if there's a couple of risk factors, they are able to close these locks temporarily and basically protect the country behind it. They have similar kind of very interesting engineering solutions, for example, in this area on the northern side, because it's a big river that basically connects the ocean with the port of Rotterdam, which is one of the biggest ports in the world. And so they didn't want to close that off because shipping, ships could not go in and out, but they still wanted to be able to close that off when there's a storm coming up. And so they created a huge, basically a gate of 90 meters, like 270 feet long doors on both sides of the river that you can actually close at the time that a storm comes up of high tide is reaching us. So it's a pretty fascinating works, and I think if you're interested, Google it a little bit because there's quite some nice online content on that. So before closing this and opening it up for questions, I just wanted to finish with the fact that we're not only fighting against the water, because of course this country also has really gained a lot with water. Made us big traders. We sailed the oceans, gave us a lot of prosperity, and also we enjoy it a lot nowadays, right? We love sailing through beautiful nature and beautiful historic villages and cities. I love my paddleboarding, as you can see. I did that. This was last week here in Amsterdam. And even in winter, when water turns into ice, we have a very popular sport here in the Netherlands. We love the ice skate. So it's not only fighting against the water, it's living with the water and finding the right balance between water, people, trade, and nature. And that's how I wanted to close this my presentation and open it up for questions, or in Dutch, vragen.
All right. What? Could you go back one picture just
Yeah.
for 1 second? So the ice skating, isn't there a big, like really long race, kind of like a marathon, but ice skates?
There is in the north, actually in Friesland, in that province where they speak a different language. That's called the 11 City Tour, the Elfstedentocht, and it's basically connecting 11 cities by waterways, and it's a 200 kilometers, so it's about 130 mile ice skating race that is extremely popular in the Netherlands. Unfortunately, it can only happen when the ice is thick enough, so you have to have a pretty harsh winter. And unfortunately, the last 20 years, we didn't have enough hard enough winters for that, or like cold enough winters for that. So unfortunately, it has not taken place for the last 20 years. But when it takes place, the whole country comes to a stop, and 30,000, I think that's the max. 30,000 people are skating it from 5 o'clock in the morning till I think the latest you can finish around 10 o'clock at night. But it's a big event. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. All right, explorers, it's time to ask our questions. So make sure you go ahead and start sending in those questions early and often. Okay, so let's see if we can. Can you start? There we go. All right. So as we start to look at some of your questions, I put together just a quick flyby of right in downtown Amsterdam. Maybe we can get a better idea, or an idea of some of these canals that's going right through the city. It's pretty amazing, explorers, when you look at it. Is it almost like the entire city? You could take a boat anywhere?
Yes, you can actually, and it's basically, if you look from above, it's basically like it's a kind of a U form, and every canal has is connecting it's all connecting back to one big river in the north. Yeah. So you can see that here, right? You see they're all basically going in a cone, and basically that every time the city expanded, they added another canal. So you can see the growth of the city from the inside out. Yeah.
All right.
And then the big one in the north is the River I, but you see another bigger river here. You see my cursor or not? No, you don't see that. But on the right
Yeah,
hand side,
I can add it. So these are,
canals.
all the canals are going like this, yeah?
Yeah, correct. And then you see the river, the small river that's diagonal in the bottom of your screen.
Here?
This one, yeah, that river, this river, that's the River Amstel. And basically, in the center where you see the word Amsterdam, that's where it's Dam Square, and there was basically a dam in the Amstel River, and that's where the name Amsterdam comes from.
Oh, wow. That's
And that's
amazing.
the city center, basically. The dam is where the city started as a little village.
All right, so all these are just canals, canal after canal after canal.
Correct. Yeah.
Pretty cool. All right, so there's some great explorers after the show today. Go explore around Amsterdam with Google Earth, because everything is pretty amazing. They have a really nice setup in 3D and you can go explore the canals after our show. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to asking our questions, because that's what we're here for. We're here to meet a local, not play with Google Earth. So let's start asking our questions. Let's see, does the Netherlands have a national animal and a national sport? Here, let's go with those two.
A national animal we don't really have, as far as I know. I mean, we're having a lot of cows here, and we love our dairy product. I think we have the best dairy product in the world, but we don't really have a national animal, as far as I know. Oh, yeah, actually, cows. No. Actually, wrong. The lion. It's also part of our arms. So a lion. That's the national animal. And the national sports is by far soccer. Uh, but as mentioned, ice skating is very popular as well. And so um, uh, ice skating is definitely also, when we're in the Olympics, there's a lot of Dutch people winning ice skating medals. But I would say soccer and ice skating. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have an entire class from North Carolina, English is second language class. So they have a lot of folks from all over. No one from the Netherlands, they're
Yeah.
saying. But they do want to know, why are the wooden shoes from Holland so famous? Do you know the background to the wooden shoes?
I know. I don't know why they're so famous. I know they're the reason why, as far as I know. First of all, I think they're made out of local woods, right? So farmers basically cut them out of tree chunks at the time, right? A long time ago. And I think one of the reasons why they were wearing them was, one, it's they have a very flat um, bottom, and the wood is not super heavy, right? So it is something. If the soil is very it's swampy, it kind of keeps you a little bit on top of the floor, and it avoids you to basically sink in too much. I think that's one of the reasons, and of course, it's also a good hard protection for your feet. Yeah.
All right, great. And let's see, what kinds of flowers do you grow the least? So which ones are there any flowers that's grown a lot of that aren't so famous, I guess, to the rest of the world?
As far as I understand, 80% of all the flowers in the world are coming from the Netherlands. So it's a lot. So they almost grow every flower here. But of course, the most famous ones are the tulips and anything that comes with a bulb. And I think the interesting story with the bulbs is, if you look at the flower fields here, they are very famous with tourists. The reality is that actually they're only blossoming for a few weeks, because the farmers are cutting them off. Because if you let them flower too long, it's actually not good for the bulbs, and the bulbs are the things that they actually sell. So so it's interesting that now, because of the coronavirus and the lockdown, and there's no tourists, actually the farmers are cutting off the flowers much earlier than normal in the year, because it's actually better for their bulb to not have the flowers blooming and take all the energy out of it, because they actually need the bulbs to sell rather than the flowers. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did see, for our explorers out there, if you're looking for other virtual tours, I believe there were a couple of big flower gardens in the Netherlands doing virtual tours. So you can
Yeah,
do some virtual tours of the gardens.
yeah, you have the Keukenhof, and they normally are open 6 weeks out of the year. This time of the year, that's the most famous flower park, and they do very nice virtual tours now because tourists cannot visit them.
Can
Yeah,
you write the name in the chat box
I will.
as I look
Yeah,
for our next
and
question
I'll
here?
send you the URL.
Awesome, great. Let's see. We have another. So Kathy had a comment. They get a box. I guess it's like one of the membership boxes where you get snacks from different parts of the world. And she said she got a box with snacks for the Netherlands. So that was pretty cool.
What did you get?
Uh, she didn't say. She just said she got a snack crate. So let us know what you got, Kathy.
Yeah, because there's
And
some very interesting ones.
all right. And
Mm.
so she also asked, is there some, I guess, here, let me rephrase it. If we come to the Netherlands, what's your favorite snack, or what's your favorite dish that you would give to us first?
Ooh, um, wow, that's a difficult one. I like a croquette, and A croquette is actually um, it's not very healthy for you, but it's like it's basically it's a fried. Um, it looks like a sausage, but it's crispy on the outside, and there's some kind of a ragu on the inside, a meat ragu. Um, it's like I said, it's not healthy, but kind of like it. So that's probably I would probably give you try that.
Right. Well, I don't know too many of the world's best foods that are healthy.
No, exactly, that's true.
It's probably why they're so good.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Are most? Ooh, this is a great one. So, referring to the windmills, are they still functional, or at this point, are they more of a cultural and historical thing?
No, there. I mean, I don't think that anyone relies upon them to pump the land dry, right? So that's all replaced, I think, by electric pumps, and there's still, I think, some steam pumps or like semi semi steam pumps that's still functioning. Windmills are still, in some cases, people are living in it. Some cases they are still functioning as a tourist attraction, but there's also still plenty of them that they're still using not for pumping necessarily, but for sewing wood and things like that, or milling grains, milling corn, and that kind of stuff. So they're still using it. Yeah,
Oh, great.
grinding. Sorry, I was searching for the word grinding corn.
And the follow up question to that is, uh, with with being famous for windmills, is wind power a big source of power in the Netherlands?
Yes, it is. The only challenge that we have is that there's not a lot of space because it's a very populated country, so, and windmills need some space, and of course they also create some noise and some visual. Let's say that visual. No, get into the word disturbance, right? In some way. So
Right.
what they're doing now a lot, they build a lot of wind parks out on the ocean. So if you're flying, for example, from England, from the UK to the Netherlands, and you're flying over the ocean, you see a lot of windmills in the middle of the ocean. So they're not in anyone's way, and they're not disturbing the landscape. So they're building a lot of them, and they're already a lot of them. Yeah.
Oh, great. Does the Netherlands really have? I guess they want to know: are they really are the tulip fields huge, or when we see pictures, is it just how you can take pictures to make things look bigger than they really are?
Yeah, I mean, it depends a little bit. To be honest, I think the the tulip fields that are closest to the tourist area, so where a lot of tourists are going, and for example, to that park, the Keukenhof that I put in the chat, right? That's where the majority of tourists go. They're big, but then they're not massive, but they're big. Uh, but I think more outside of the tourist area, they're bigger ones. So, but they're quite big. But they're all the ones in the tourist area, like on the west side of the country. They're in definitely more populated area. So it's a lot of tulip fields, but then kind of basically changed with some villages or some other some other buildings in between. Yeah.
Oh, great, great.
But it is a lot of there's a lot of tulip fields. But I always think you actually experience it more when you're flying over it with a plane than when you're on the ground.
Awesome. Amazing. So if you have additional questions, get those sent in because we've already been a little bit over our time, and you're so gracious with his time to be with us today. We want to be respectful of his time. So if you have any burning questions that you want to ask, make sure you get those in sooner than later. I have a question of my own. Often we think about e- countries like people have reputations. Is there a reputation that you wish that maybe you think is incorrect about the Netherlands? Say, a lot of people in the U.S. think about wooden shoes or tulips, or is there something you think that we should we should look more into, or we should look more towards the Netherlands for as being famous for? I guess that's a really
Yeah,
wordy
no,
question.
that's a good question. That's a good question. No, I think, of course, um, uh, we're trying to romanticize sometimes this history of countries, right? And windmills and wooden shoes and flowers, and of course that's part of the heritage and our history. But of course, it's also very. This is also a very modern country. We also have skyscrapers. We also have, you know, you know, fast speed internet, technology innovation, and so I think that's always something to remember when you look at the history of countries that maybe are older. They also moved on. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that's yeah. So I think that I would say. I think it's which I think is interesting for people if they are interested in the Netherlands is to really look into agriculture and to understand um, the Netherlands is a tiny little country, but it's the second biggest exporter in the world of agricultural products. With a very small country size of country and a lot of people in it, so there's a lot of innovation coming from this country on how to uh, grow crops efficiently and in good quality. And I think that's something very how you say it, something very valuable for the world as it search for opportunities to increase, to keep on feeding an ever increasing population. So maybe that's something for further study for people if they like.
Wow, that's amazing, especially the size of the Netherlands,
Yeah.
being that efficient with their crop production. Oh wow. Um, and let's see, do we have another one there? All right. Well, I do. We've been getting a lot of questions with all of our guests that we've been having on here. Obviously, everyone's dealing with COVID-19 right now. What is the situation like right now in Amsterdam? Are you still on quarantine, or are you allowed to go out? If so, where can you go? And are people going to restaurants at this point? What's it like in Amsterdam right now?
So we kind of we went over our peak a little bit, right? So we've been for the last 2 months we were kind of advised to stay at home or requested to stay at home as much as possible, but we've never been completely. It's more like in the US. We've worked from home. Schools were closed, but you could still go outside for a walk or to do some errands for the essential stuff. Um, Now they're starting to release a little bit, and so because we're kind of over the peak, the people that are sick, the amount of people that are sick are reducing quite fast now. And so actually, just an hour before we started this call, our prime minister went back on television to announce the next steps on the further opening up the country. And we knew already that schools would start next week again, but only I think 50% of the kids per day. So basically, kids will only go to school to elementary schools for half of the week, and then high schools will not open till the 1st of June. And I think as of next week, also slowly um, some other functions are like retail functions are starting opening up more and more. But our bars and restaurants and that kind of stuff are still closed till the end of this month. And then I think they slowly start to open the outside areas in bars and restaurants, but not the bars themselves yet. Um, yeah. So, but it's we've been on lockdown, but not as extreme in some other countries in Europe. So they've been much more free to still go outside and still do some some fun stuff. But oh yeah, for sure, with at least 6 feet distance, and that we will have to continue to do, and of course keep on washing our hands, and uh, and be very smart on coughing and sneezing. And if you're sick, we have to stay inside.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing.
No
And
worries.
I guess I'll throw in one last question here,
Yeah,
if
no
you have
worries.
time for it.
Of course,
And
yeah,
so a lot of our
fun.
students tend to be younger, and so we often get questions about school. And so I
Yeah,
know it may have been a little while since you've been in
yeah.
school, but what's the typical school year look like in the Netherlands? Meaning, when does it start? When does it
Yeah.
end?
So we have our school year usually starts, and it depends a little bit because they have the country divided in three sections: north, middle, and south, to avoid that everyone goes on vacation around the same time. But usually the school year starts in August, and then we have we have a fall holiday around October for a week in elementary school, and then we have a big end of year holiday with Christmas and New Year for 2 weeks. And then we continue usually till I think in February there is another holiday for a week, and then we continue to May, where there's usually a 1 week holiday, and then we kind of finish the year in June, July. And usually there's 6 weeks of summer vacation. So definitely less than in the United States. They have usually a longer summer holiday, I know, but 6 weeks summer vacation. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for
No
sharing
worries.
with us today.
Of course, it
All
was
right.
fun.
Definitely, definitely. Well, explorers, we all know someone from the Netherlands now. So all of you have at least virtually met Jorrit, and he has been gracious enough to spend his time with us this evening and share a little bit about his country. So we love these programs because one of my favorite things about technology is we're able to really speak with people on the other side of the world and meet people and learn from them when we can't always travel, especially right now. But even during the rest of the year, it's not always possible with school and other things, and it costs a lot of money, and it's just not always possible to do so. So we're really grateful and appreciative for the technology. And anytime that you come across in your school books anything about the Netherlands now, and hopefully it's in the news, we always come across good things instead of like natural disasters and bad things. But either way, you all know someone from the Netherlands now, and so definitely go out there and learn more about this amazing country. Peter wants to come in and say his he has a brother has been to the Netherlands 4 years ago. Was he in school, Peter? Let us know before we sign off here.
I hope you liked it.
All right, me too. And let us know as we start winding down to here as well. If you would like to go to the Netherlands, we would love to hear from you as well. So as we start to wind down, as always, we like to say here on Learn Around the World is it's a great big world out there. So keep exploring. There's so much of it to see. And until further notice, keep exploring virtually. And you can come right back here at Learn Around the World to do that. Until next time, bye, explorers. Keep distancing and keep washing your hands. Thank you so much, Jorrit, and tell Jonathan hello for me and Kelsey.
I will. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
bye, everyone.
Bye.